Awaiting our Shepherd. My name is Daniel Vallis, and welcome to our channel. We've been looking at the Shiloh prophecy, and it's amazing to see how the Lord has been giving us particular information and more details and drawing our attention back to things He has shown us before and helping us view it in a new perspective. And then that affects our understanding of where we are now too as well. And this is a critical point in the concept of watching. It's not just looking for dates or looking at specific times. It's a continual watching of studying the story, looking at the backstory, looking into God's Word, looking at the story and the tapestry of redemption over time, seeing what God is doing in the prophetic time and knowing the time. And it is this collective knowledge of the time that drives us to shine bright and to cast off the works of darkness and to live in light of eternity. And as we see this story developing more and more, we see the hand of God directing us through it all and directing our paths and calling us to draw nigh to Him. And we've been particularly drawn toward the point of opposition when Jupiter was shining at its brightest. And it did so right at the hind foot of Leo, calling our attention to it and really drawing our attention to the Shiloh prophecy at that time too as well. And in a way, I feel like the wise men, because the wise men went about 95% of their journey not even knowing where they were going. Think about that. We have been looking for the border and trying to do research of trying to find academic resources to tell us where is this border, where would they have viewed the border at. But in a likewise manner, the wise men went most of their journey not even knowing where the birthplace was, not even knowing where their border equivalent was, so to speak. They knew a lot of information already, and that got them on the journey, that got them up and going, and they headed toward Jerusalem not even knowing specifically where the king was going to be born. And that piece of information was at Jerusalem, and it was a common knowledge item to them there, but the wise men did not have it, and God did not bring it to their attention until most of their journey was already done. And so we need to remember this too. God is not going to give us the entire picture right away. He's going to draw us forward in steps. We are on a learning journey, and He's going to give us light unto our path, unto our feet, expecting us to take steps of faith and obedience as we go forward. And as we go forward, like the wise men, we will find that our knowledge increases as we go along. We're not going to get a lot of information at the very beginning. We're going to get just what we need to get going and to keep going. And just like the wise men went most of their journey not even knowing the most important piece of information that they wanted to know. They wanted to know where was the king born. That was the whole reason they went on their trip. They did not even know where they should be looking, but they went out looking anyway. And likewise, we don't know where the border is, but we have seen enough for us to get up and to go out and to look for the bridegroom. We have heard the trumpet call of midnight. We had heard the lion roar. We have seen so many celestial events that caught our attention in light of other prophetic events too. And so we've gone out asking the same question. Where is He? Where is He? And as we get closer to the end of our journey, we get much more detailed information of what we are looking for at the right time in God's timing. And He's brought to our attention how we now have documented evidence of how they did use Jupiter at opposition to divide the constellations. And you can find this in a variety of resources. For example, the Origins of the Ancient Constellations, the Mesopotamian Traditions Journal of the British Astronomical Association. And so the Lord is giving us the evidence we need now, the specific details that we need now, the academic evidence, so we can have a better understanding of where we are now in God's timing. And He's looking for wise men, the wise bride, who will rise up just at the call of the bridegroom, just at the simple signs to go out and start looking. That's what the wise men did. They started looking. And that's the example of the wise virgins. They were told to rise up and go out to meet Him. They were told to go out and look for Him. It was midnight. They didn't know where He's at. That's what we're called to do, to rise up, to shine bright, and to go out and look for our Redeemer. And this information has solidified where we are now in our view, and we can see that time is quickly running out for this time frame with the Shiloh prophecy. And just like the wise men learned important, valuable prophetic passages and insights right at the very end, they learned about the prophecy regarding Bethlehem and other aspects too, and seeing how it all came together right at the very end, only at the very end. And so we should not be surprised that a lot of this information is coming to our attention now. It's coming to our attention when we need it, and when we have the backstory and all the other back information from everything else we've looked at to see how it all fits together. There are certain things we would not understand or even understand what we should be looking at without the stops that we made along the way. And so we can very, very strongly say that the point of opposition appears to be the division point. particularly in light of the prophetic signs and the celestial signs too, everything pointing to that marker as well as the academic sources. And someone brought up the question just about the division, how it was right between Leo the lion and Virgo, and they were just asking about how it straddles the two. But also keep in mind that the Chaldean stars, the hind foot of the lion, goes all the way to Zavijava. So both feet of the lion are in the Judah section, the section that our attention has been brought to. Which is interesting because that's the section that deals with the latter half of the Shiloh prophecy too as well. But we've also talked about in the Shiloh booklet as well that they equally divided the ecliptic line into 12 different segments that would represent the 12 different constellations. But because the constellations are not equally spaced, they will not naturally fall into those nice pretty little boxes and divisions, no matter how you rotate those divisions. You will always have some that are not even in their box either. And particularly Virgo and Leo and Aquarius, those are really large constellations that will always straddle and always be sliced somewhere beyond nice and pretty. And we could see from the opposition points right now that it straddles the area between Virgo and Leo. But that is the section that they would designate for Judah, for the lion in their understanding. And we noted all the events that happened at the opposition point when Jupiter was at its brightest, calling attention to it, even in the night sky, how bright it was, calling attention to that point, how significant it was, and then all the other events that happened right there too. We talked about in the last video. But primarily, also the concept of that was the time for redemption with the atonement money, the half shekel, that was due several hours after opposition. And so tying these two ideas together, the ideas of redemption and paying the price, paying the ransom, connected to the very marker that we are looking at. And we've talked a lot before about how Christ came to pay our ransom. He came to redeem us, to buy us. And he has purchased his bride, the church body, which is made up of all the individuals who put their faith and trust in the finished work of Jesus Christ. He has purchased us. He has paid the bride price. We did not pay the price at all, no part of it. But he paid the bride price. And then on top of the bride price, he also gave us gifts. And on top of the bride price, he also paid out earnest to show he was good for his promises. And he has told us that he is going to make a place for us and that he is coming again to pick us up. He is coming to redeem us. We talked about that concept of redemption, picking up what has already been purchased. And this is what we are waiting for. We are waiting for the redemption, the pickup of the purchased possession. It has already been paid for in the past. And if you haven't yet, definitely watch our video Exodus 2, the redeemed possession, which beautifully explains and shows how we are a redeemed possession. And the beautiful tapestry of redemption that our bridegroom has shown us and how he has paid for us and how he has paid the bride price. We are awaiting our redemption. We are awaiting our pickup. We are trusting in his promises that he will come again. Luke 21:28. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. And we are told to look up and we will see things connected to our redemption. We will see things in the heavens that are connected with the story of our tapestry of redemption. And so the more that we study about our redemption, and we study how we are a purchased possession, and we study the bride price that was paid, and we study the ransom and the atonement that was paid, the easier it will be to look up and to recognize the story and the sign that we are told to look at, and the sign that's also going to tell us a countdown to our pickup and redemption. So when we saw other prophetic events coming together with the fig tree prophecy and the last generation and many other things coming together in these perilous times that we were told would be markers of his soon return and that the tribulation judgments were going to start soon, when we saw all these things coming together, we started looking up and we took note more so of celestial signs because we knew that we should be paying attention to them because they were going to mark that our redemption was drawing nigh. And we took note of all the events that happened right around Jupiter opposition. And now we have a fresh look as we see the star again from a new perspective of seeing more so how it fits into this overall tapestry of redemption, of how it is connected to our redemption. But then we also took notice about how that entire time frame right around there was very significant too as well. Let's look at that again. We noticed how there was the fast of Esther and Purim, And our attention was initially drawn toward the time of Purim by the Star of Bethlehem signs, the conjunctions of Jupiter and Venus. Those caught our attention, especially when we realized, okay, this normally should signal that the king is returning. And so that really got us interested in watching and drew our attention to the time of Purim, which was also the time of the fast of Esther, the commemorative fast of Esther. And when we got to that point is when the Lord opened our eyes to the other choreography with Jupiter and Leo the lion and the Shiloh prophecy. That is when our attention was brought to the broader picture. And particularly the timing of how it was all happening at March 8th and 9th, with all the other celestial events highlighting that this day was very important. And on top of that, it was right in the middle of the retrograde loop. And that really drew our attention in hindsight. We hadn't been watching up until that point, but when we realized what was going on, we realized that in a sense Jupiter the scepter was circling by itself, circling and drawing attention to the leg, and drawing attention to the feet. And that drew our attention eventually to the Shiloh prophecy too. So both of these events pointing out how this singular time was very important. This particular marker was very important. And then, of course, the atonement and the redemption being due at that time and how it was connected. We had been studying it the days before we got there, so we had the backstory of that. And now in hindsight, we can see how it clicks with the celestial signs that we were noticing at the time. Even though we didn't quite make that connection at that point, we took note of what was coming together. But now the Lord is showing us how they come together with new insight. But we had been paying attention to the fast of Esther and learning new things about all these in the time of Purim too as well. But particularly that the fast of Esther, which is observed right at the time of Purim, right before it, it's actually a commemorative event. It's not the true event. Because when you read the story of Esther, the true fast of Esther happened at the time of Passover. That is when the true fast of Esther happened. And so, because Passover is a appointed feast day, you can't commemorate a fast during the middle of a feast, particularly one that you're commanded to observe. So what the Jewish people did is they pushed back the fast of Esther a month and commemorate it a month early, just so they don't conflict with each other, and they observe it at the same time as Purim. So at the time of Purim and at the time of the fast of Esther, you're actually commemorating an event that happens in the future. Do you see a unique pattern that's happening right here? A loop pattern? This is so amazing. The events themselves bookend on either side of Jupiter at its brightest, but it forms a retrograde of events, a commemorative event that points to a future event as you move along in the future. The picture that it's all enveloped by is also a retrograde circling this whole time, bringing attention to what's at the center of it. And when we consider that it's a circle within a circle and a circle, God is drawing our attention and saying on multiple levels, pay attention to this marker. It is very important. This point of opposition, when Jupiter, the scepter, is at its brightest, pay attention to this marker. And now in hindsight, we could see how that point, as we move forward, would be very important to understanding where we are now. And so when we zoom out a bit, we see the point of opposition where Jupiter is at its brightest, but then we also see how it's also circled with pictures of the bride getting herself ready to go to the king's house, and then see it in connection with the redemption, the paying of the bride price, all coming together right there. So on one side of the coin, you have the picture of Esther, the bride, making herself ready, going through preparation and purification. On the other side, at the second instance, right at the time of Passover, you have the lamb who was slain to pay the bride price. Do you see how these pictures go together? How they are woven together? The picture of the bride and the picture of the bridegroom, the one who paid the bride price, the redemption, the atonement. All of that connected to this point. And from that point, we have been on an incredible journey, and that has been leading us to the next opposition mark, which defines and measures out the Shiloh prophecy, the time frame when we are expecting the redemption, the pickup of the purchased possession. Now, does that path remind you of anything? The path that starts at the picture of the bride, the sheep who have gone astray, the shepherd who provided himself a lamb to pay the bride price, and to seek and to find the lost sheep. Do you see what shape is marked out by that path that starts at that point? What does it remind you of? Let's zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. It reminds us of a shepherd's crook, the shepherd's staff. The shepherd's staff and the shepherd's crook, as it's commonly called to as well, is well known and has a very long history and is still used even today. Makes a great tool for the shepherd. It's what the shepherd is associated with. When you see a shepherd's crook, you automatically are associated with the shepherd and the sheep. And so when we see a shepherd's crook connected with the shepherd who gave himself a lamb, we are reminded of the sheep that he came to purchase. John 10:7. Then said Jesus unto them again, Verily, verily, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. By me if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief cometh not, but for to steal, and to kill, and to destroy. I am come, that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. But he that is an hireling, and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep, and fleeth, and the wolf catcheth them, and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth, because he is an hireling, and careth not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father knoweth me, even so know I the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold, and one shepherd. Therefore doth my Father love me, because I lay down my life, that I might take it again. No man taketh it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This commandment have I received of my Father. Jesus Christ is the good shepherd, and he laid down his life for his sheep. And notice in verse 16, he was talking to the Jews, and he told them that he had another fold, which is the Gentile fold. And Christ came to be a light to the Gentiles, to the whole world. And he said, Them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be one fold, and one shepherd. And one day God will gather the one fold, and then at another time he will gather the other fold, and then prophetically one day we will all be one fold, with one shepherd. Jesus Christ is the door of the sheep, and he is the good shepherd who gave his life for the sheep. We are reminded of the story of David, who was a shepherd as a young boy, just like this little shepherd here. And he was very well familiar with the concept of gathering the sheep and calling the sheep to obedience. And they would gather to him obediently. And then eventually, as we know the story, he would become king of Israel, and he still regarded himself as a shepherd king. And he regarded his people as his sheep that he was responsible for. And we talk about this in the Shiloh booklet, the dual concept of gathering and obedience, and how it also goes with the pictures of the shepherd king. In Shiloh, he is our shepherd, but he is also our king. And he is calling us to obedience, and he has paid the bride price. We are his sheep, and he calls us to obedience, to follow him. And so when we look up, and we lift up our heads, we can see this beautiful picture of our shepherd who gave his life for his sheep. The one who paid the bride price, who paid the atonement, who paid the ransom. We see this picture marked at that point, and we see the progression measured out with the shepherd's staff, which would be equivalent to Shiloh's scepter. The staff of the king is also the staff of the shepherd, using his scepter, which is Jupiter, to measure out the time of redemption. Genesis 49:10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. 2 Thessalonians 2:1. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him. This is our hope, this is our expectation. We are awaiting the gathering. He calls us with his voice to obedience, to lift up our heads, to look, and to see that the time of our redemption is drawing nigh, and that we should be living accordingly and in light of what we see. We can see and tell that time is running out on the staff that has been laid out before us. We see the next story that he also told his disciples about the sign of the Son of Man. We see that about to commence in a few days just beyond the end of Judah's scepter, just beyond the end of Judah's shepherd's crook. his shepherd's staff. Around December 16th and 17th is when Judah, the scepter, would be entering Virgo's body, and the pregnancy picture would be starting about that time. We have a beautiful picture laid out for us, the story of our redemption, and we could tell that our redemption is drawing nigh. The Lamb of God, who is also the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And when he laid down his shepherd's staff, at the very beginning we were reminded of the Shiloh prophecy, and the one who did come to lay down his life for his sheep. And this beautiful picture, once we understand the picture, once we study the tapestry of redemption, we can see what we're supposed to look up and see. And we can see that our redemption is drawing nigh. We do not know the day or hour, but we do know that our expectation of the gathering of his sheep, his other fold to him, is within this time frame. And we also know that other prophetic events are about to transpire too as well, particularly with Virgo and the sign of the Son of Man, which will eventually culminate in the Revelation 12 sign. And we have this printout available in our Google Drive, so definitely download that and print it out for a reference of the different timing of events. December 8th, 9th would mark the equivalent mark along the ecliptic when the next opposition point would be. And then we could see that the pregnancy picture would start shortly thereafter, which is expected when we understand the timing of the Shiloh prophecy too as well. A 40-week pregnancy starts shortly after the end of the Shiloh prophecy. But then we also see that the biblical pattern for conception starts a few days before that too as well. And this is where we are on the 16th and 17th right now, running out of time, but also in some very significant prophetic times where we are right now too as well, and that needs to catch our attention. Definitely download the Peace and Safety Announced handout, print it out, and take note that the calls for peace and safety that went out spreads across several days. And we've mentioned this before. These are very high-level calls for peace and safety, a combo term that went out multiple times at very high levels that hasn't even been reached with other recent calls lately for peace and safety. The ones that went out last year were on a totally higher level than anything else that we've ever seen before, and in a very tight window too as well. And notice that really the last significant one happened on November 30th. There was one more on December 24th that caught our attention and was significant, but it was grouped off by itself. But notice the main cluster of them ended on November 30th. So print this out and keep it in mind because it's very important. Because when we look at the event study calendar that you also printed out, you can see how these two go together. Now, I did make a slight update to the event study calendar. I had forgotten to put the markers of when the Hebrew 9th month and the Hebrew 10th month started. So those are now added in there too as well for reference. So let's zoom in on that. And you can see right now that we are on the 16th and 17th. We are in the anniversary of the Peace and Safety Days right now, which straddles this week, next week, and part of the week after that. So this time period is very important because we were told by Christ himself in Scripture that the very next thing that is expected on the prophetic scale after you hear this warning is sudden destruction is coming. Sudden destruction. It's going to come completely out of the blue. And so it's also amazing when we see the time frame of what we're told to listen for and how it lines up with this border division of December 8th, but also the conception from a biblical perspective happening days before that too as well. There's multiple things coming together, many things coming together that strongly show us this is the time. We should be expecting the gathering to happen any day now. When we look back on the cyclical calendar, that gives us an idea of the events that happened last year, but we can also use it as a reference for this year when we just go by the Hebrew months, now that we know what time it is. And we could see that we are in the equivalent of the second watch and the third watch. And we talked about this before. We are in a prophetic time on multiple points that Christ told us to look for. We see them all coming together right now where we are. And we're in the 9th month right now, Kislev, on the calendar that we've been following, right during the anniversary time of the peace and safety warnings that went out. But it should also catch our attention that between the second watch of the night and the third watch of the night is prophetically midnight, which lands and falls right at the time of Hanukkah, when oil lamps should be full and burning. Does that remind you of a certain parable? It should. Parable of the wise virgins and those who were foolish. We see this on the horizon, and we are just slightly halfway through the month of Kislev right now, approaching midnight. Right during the anniversary of the warnings of peace and safety, and we know that sudden destruction is coming next. And when we look back on the calendar with that in mind, the 10th month is going to mark the midnight hour, so to speak. Doesn't mean Christ is coming back on that day. No, that's just a time. He told us to expect him sometime in the second watch to the third watch, a time frame. He gave us a time frame. And the closer we get to that time frame, we see a lot of other things coming together, narrowing down our focus of when we should be looking and expecting the gathering of Shiloh's people. Matthew 25:6. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. The whole crux of the story of the wise virgins is about shining bright, knowing that the bridegroom was coming. And they heard the voice and the cry that he was coming. So they rose up and they made themselves ready. And they went out looking for him. They don't know where he's at, but they went out looking for him. And we have heard the prophetic calls on multiple levels telling us that our redemption is drawing nigh. And we have been casting off the works of darkness and putting on the armor of light, making ourselves ready, going through times of preparation and purification, just like Esther. So we are shining bright before we even meet the bridegroom. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning. And ye yourselves like unto men that wait for the Lord when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Blessed are those servants, whom the Lord when he cometh shall find watching. Verily I say unto you that he shall gird himself, and make them to sit down to meat, and will come forth and serve them. And if he shall come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. And this know, that if the goodman of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched, and not have suffered his house to be broken through. Be ye therefore ready also, for the Son of Man cometh at an hour when ye think not. Be ye therefore ready also. This is our standing order. When we have the expectation that our Lord is about to return, he has gone off to prepare a place for us, and he has told us that he will be returning, and he told us various things to clue us in of when he would be returning and when we should be expecting him, and when we should be looking up, understanding that our redemption is nigh. And he gives us our standing orders as his servants to occupy till he comes, and to be ready also, to prepare our lives, to be shining bright, to have our loins girded about, to be ready to go, to be ready to rise up and to go forward, living in light of eternity, and that our bridegroom, our Redeemer, is returning. He has told us that he wants to find us with our lights burning. And we see this picture even on the horizon now prophetically with Hanukkah, the reminder to have oil in our lamps, to focus on what matters, to shine bright for him, to live and to strive to be Christ-like so that the world can see Christ shining through us. This is the time when we know the time, when we cast off, when we purify our lives and get rid of what is hindering us from shining bright, and we put on the armor of light so we can shine and be like him. The greater our expectation of seeing our bridegroom and our beloved and our Redeemer, the more we should strive to model our life after him, and to follow him, and to listen to his voice, and to obey him, our shepherd. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. We are to look to our shepherd, the one who laid down his life for his sheep, so that he could pay the bride price, and redeem us, and atone us, and pay our ransom. Our shepherd is our beloved. And as we have the hope of his soon return to gather what he has paid for, and whom he loves, who he laid his life down for, when we have this hope, we should be purifying ourselves, even as he is pure. This is a demonstration of our love toward our shepherd, the one who laid down his life for us, for his sheep. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness, for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The Lord is my shepherd. When we listen to the shepherd's voice, and we follow him, and he directs us with his staff and with his shepherd's crook, he will lead us in the way that he wants us to go. He will call us with his voice and call us to rise up and to go out to meet him. And like the wise men, they heard the call. They saw the signs. They rose up and they followed the path that God led them on. It wasn't the path that we would have expected of taking them straight to where the king was. No, God took them on a particular path because there were certain things that he wanted to show them. So he directed their paths, and they saw valuable insights and learning lessons that have impacted people for 2,000 years. It is when we follow our shepherd and we follow his voice. He will give light to our feet. He will show us the path, the steps we need to take one at a time. And we will trust the way that he directs us to be the best way. His way is always best. His way is perfect. Ecclesiastes 7:13. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? The path that God leads us on will not always be the path that we expect. God purposely did not give the wise men certain pieces of information that they would have liked to have had. He took them on a scenic route because there were things he wanted to show them. He took them on a crooked path. The shepherd, with his staff, directed him on the path that he wanted to go. And it is this work of God, the tapestry of redemption, that we observe in hindsight, when we may consider and ask the Lord, Lord, you seem to be taking us on a very crooked path here, the scenic path. Why aren't you taking us on a straight path? We should consider the work of God. What is he showing us? What has he showed us? And as we go forward and we trust the shepherd's direction and we listen to his voice, he will direct us to the pastures where we need to be and guide us in the way we should be going. It is when we trust the shepherd and we obey the shepherd and we gather ourselves under him in willing obedience of our heart, preparing our heart and our life and purifying our heart in expectation of one day being gathered into his fold, expecting the shepherd to call us home, come up hither. We have heard the shepherd's voice. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. And he is watching us to see who is obedient, who will rise up, who will shine bright, and who will serve him first and highest above all else. Maranatha.